Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Rwanda, Vice President and Treasurer of the IFC, Mr. Jingdonghua, Honorable Ministers from the region, Honorable Ministers of the Republic of Rwanda present here today, distinguished guests, welcome to the Capital Markets East Africa International Conference. This is the first time the event is being held, and it is indeed an honor for Rwanda to be its pioneer host. Your Excellency, this year's theme is Accelerating Economic Development Through Capital Markets. The benefits that the capital market offers, particularly as an enabler of sustainable economic growth and increased self-reliance, have been well recognized by the government of Rwanda, and indeed East Africa as a whole. And this theme is therefore pertinent as we move away from nascent discussions of the need for capital markets and to how we can fully tap into and leverage on these capital markets as both a pivot and a driver in fast-tracking the realization of our ambitious development visions. With this in mind, Your Excellency, this year's conference will cover salient issues such as the role of capital markets in addressing the real issues of our time, such as infrastructure development, financial inclusion, and affordable housing, as well as the opportunities that are presented by the East African regional capital markets. Your Excellency, 7 years ago, as you opened the Rwanda Stock Exchange, you described it as a milestone. Your presence here today reaffirms this conviction, and we're very appreciative of your continued prioritization of the capital markets as a catalyst for long-term, productive private investments. Your Excellency, distinguished guests, allow me now to invite the Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Honorable Claver Gatete, to deliver his welcome remarks. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, the Vice President of the IFC, honorable ministers present here, distinguished corporates, distinguished participants here, this conference. I want to welcome you on behalf of the President to Rwanda for the first conference in the East Africa that is being held here. But Mr. President, before I think I go on, I want to thank you personally for the support you've been giving to the financial sector. I was looking the past, I would say, support that you've been giving us. And it's very surprising that actually you helped us build the whole entire financial sector. In 2007, you directed that the central bank should not only regulate the banking system, but in addition, it should be regulating the insurance and the pension to make sure there is stability in the financial market. And this has been done, and there is stability at this moment in time. In 2008, when there was a study by the Finiscope that was looking at the financial inclusion, and they found that only 21% of the Rwandans were inclusive in the official banking system. You took a decision that banks, microfinance banks, savings and credit cooperatives should be established across the country. And this also allowed the banking system to establish branches. And within 4 years, the landscape had changed because the inclusion had increased from 21% to 42%. And the global inclusion, including the informal sector, it had gone 72%, which was very significant in only 4 years. At the same time, having supported the central bank as the regulator, last year when they were celebrating 50 years of the existence, you gave us further directive on how to improve the financial sector. At the same time, you gave further guidance last year again when you're opening the African insurers meeting that took place here in Kigali on how to improve the sector of insurance. And now for the capital market, which you launched, Your Excellency, which you helped to establish. we are very happy that you managed to get the time for a conference like this that is happening in Rwanda, where you are trying to figure out how to benefit not only in Rwanda or East Africa, but also at the African continent, on how to build a prosperous capital market that can help the private sector to flourish. So we thank you, Your Excellency, for this kind of support that is helping us to build a real financial sector that is going to help the private sector to become fully involved in the development of our country. When we started last year with my friend Mr. Jingdong, I put to him a challenge because you have a Vision 2020. And for this vision, which is going to lead us to a middle-income country, we are looking at the trend of how we are implementing it, and we realize that the government has been doing its part, but it's not sufficient, and they wanted the private sector to get involved. So we sought his advice on how this could be done. And then that's when the story started of how to start organizing this conference. So we've been co-organizing it together, also with the support of the central bank, with the support of the Capital Market Authority. And this conference has happened because of the incredible work that we have done together with the IFC, supported also by the American Institute. At the same time, for this organization of this, we are happy that we had many sponsors that have been here with us: the Equity, KCB, Koje Bank, BK, Standard Bank, Airtel, I&M, MTN, Bralirwa, and of course Thomson and Reuters have been very helpful in terms of helping us organize this conference. In this conference, you have all the expertise in the sector. We have the policymakers, we have academics, we have the practitioners. And this is where we'll be discussing the nitty-gritty details of how to build a proper market that can mobilize global resources. The reason for this is because we are seeing a change. The African economies are developing on average between 5% and 6%. But at the same time, we are seeing the donor aid also declining. Currently in 2013, the aid is about 134.8 billion. That is the official development assistance. And Sub-Saharan Africa is getting a share of only 21.4%. At the same time, we have been seeing this, at least on real terms, the amount of money declining over time. And also we are seeing the foreign direct investments. Globally, it is 1.45 trillion. But of Africa is benefiting from 57 billion. That's the money that is flowing into Africa. And now we are saying, given the need for Africa's development, where infrastructure, depending on what you read, needs between 30 billion and 50 billion annually in terms of investment, one is asking the question, where would this money come from? Because you've seen over the past, the government had tried their best in terms of generating their own resources, but at the same time, they have improved in terms of the economic management. And that's why so many African countries have gone to the market to issue the sovereign bonds. And these include countries like South Africa, Angola, Ivory Coast, Gabon, Ghana, Namibia, Nigeria, Rwanda, Senegal, Seychelles, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Kenya, and Zambia. It means they are going to the market because their ratings also have improved significantly. But as countries, there is a limit to how much you can borrow in terms of investing. And that's why we are discussing how do we make sure that we bring in the private sector to do that. What we see is that there is resources globally. And that's why if you look at the amount of money in terms of capitalization, just taking equity globally, the equity market capitalization, currently globally it stands at 64 trillion. If you take the 4 countries of BRIC, the Brazil, Russia, India, and China, it goes to 7 trillion. For Africa, it goes to 1.5 billion. And of course, in our region here, East Africa, it's 40 billion. At least that's where the money is. And investors are there. The issue is, how do we organize our capital market to be able to tap into these kind of resources? And that's the debate for today and tomorrow that we'll be discussing to see if we can find a headway. And those nitty-gritty details are also going to address other issues. In most cases, we have markets which are small in nature in each of the countries on the African continent. And in the region, how do we do it in such a way that there is economies of scale, that people can be attracted to come to a region and be able to invest? And that's where we see that there is a possibility of bringing the money here that the private sector can tap, which is long-term money, which can be invested long-term. The problem that has been there for the private sector is that they have been reliant on the banking system on the African continent. But the banking system is also dependent on deposits that is coming out of the people who are keeping their money in the banking system. But that deposit is short-term in nature, and that is not solving us the problem of the long-term infrastructure programs that we need that require too much money, that require long-term resources that can help in terms of sustaining the growth that we are talking about. Mr. President, that's why we are holding this meeting here, which we'll be discussing for the next 2 days to benefit from the expertise, not only for Rwanda, but also for the African continent. But also there will be some, not only discussions, but there will be also some announcements, starting this morning, where we'll be having the Equity Bank Group that will be really doing the real thing of cross-listing on this market. But also, the government will be also announcing the program, again, for going on the market to be able to support, as you have continuously supported the market, Mr. President, on how we can be able to list our shares, but also our program for the bond for the whole year. But also there are private companies that also will be coming on board for this year. So far we have 2 that are coming on the market that are still preparing to make sure that they can announce on their own how they come, but they have already indicated that they are ready to come to the market. On this note, I want again to thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the cooperation with IFC. I want to thank our supporters for this conference and believe that within these 2 days, we'll come up with really good recommendations that can help us to continue to build the capital market to support the private sector development. I thank you, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your remarks, which truly set the global and regional context and highlight the need for us to organize our local capital markets to tap into the readily available private capital. Your Excellency, distinguished guests, before I invite our next speaker, who is the Vice President and Treasurer of the IFC, allow me to extend our appreciation, as the Honorable Minister briefly mentioned, to the IFC for their demonstrated commitment and confidence in developing Rwanda's capital market. In partnership with the government of Rwanda, ICF has undertaken several efforts to help build expertise in the field, raise funds for private sector development, and build enabling environments for which are conducive to a robust capital market. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Vice President of the IFC. Thank you.
Thank you. Your Excellency, the President of Republic of Rwanda, honorable ministers and governors from Rwanda and the region, senior Rwandan government officials, my fellow Vice President of IFC and senior colleagues, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Your Excellency, if I could first of all express our sincere appreciation and gratitude for your presence, your vision, leadership, and recognition of the criticality of financial and capital market development really motivate all of us to do our best in supporting the country's Vision 2020. I'm truly delighted to be here today and to welcome all of you to this conference on behalf of IFC. Let me also thank Minister Gatete and the government of Rwanda for their extraordinary leadership and support in organizing this conference. This was truly a great team effort, and we are honored to be your co-host. As I look at the room, I see a remarkable gathering of capital market experts from all over the world. The unique experiences each of you have will greatly enrich our conversation over the next 2 days. The common theme is our shared desire to support development of East Africa capital markets. Of course, the partnership between IFC and the government of Rwanda extends far beyond the organization of this conference. I want to acknowledge the strong support we have received over the years from the Ministry of Finance and the National Bank of Rwanda. We also have a strong partnership with the Capital Market Authority. This is my third time visiting Rwanda in the past few years. It is beginning to feel like a homecoming. I still remember my first visit in May 2012. IFC had just launched the Pan-Africa Domestic Medium-Term Note Program. This is our flagship capital market program in Africa, and so far 9 countries and the West Africa CFA zone are part of the program. We work closely with local authorities in these countries and region to set up domestic medium-term note program in local currency. The objective is to help streamline issuance processes and create a consistent framework that encourages domestic and international issuers to come to the African market. Rwanda was not part of the program when we launched it. To be frank, we were not confident that Rwanda was ready to join as the first batch. But when I visited Rwanda that May, and in meetings with Minister of Finance and National Bank of Rwanda, I heard a keen desire to develop the country's capital market and to be part of the program. So we agreed to include Rwanda. Again, that was in May 2012. Now, fast forward 2 years, in fact, almost to the day. On May 16, 2014, IFC issued the first local currency bond by a non-resident AAA issuer in Rwanda. We called it the IFC Umuganda bond. It was IFC's first issuance under the Pan-Africa Domestic Medium-Term Note Program and our first domestic issuance in East Africa. The bond, 15 billion francs, attracted overwhelming demand from international and domestic investors. So in 2 short years, Rwanda put in place a regulatory framework that enables a AAA issuer like IFC to come to market. The same process that has taken 4 to 5 years in other countries, IFC has debuted local issuances. I cannot think of a better story to showcase Rwanda's commitment to developing its capital market. And the fact is that even before then, Rwanda was thinking about how to develop its capital market. For example, the National Bank of Rwanda became the first African central bank to set up a swap agreement with IFC that was in 2009. So with this agreement, IFC exchanges US dollars for Rwandan francs, and this has allowed us to invest more than 17 billion Rwandan francs to support private sector development. And because we are lending in local currency, the companies and entrepreneurs that borrow from us do not incur currency risks. That was such an innovative agreement that we are using it as a model for working with other central banks, for example, with the Central Bank of Paraguay in Latin America. Without a doubt, Rwanda is serious about developing its capital market. Let me now turn to the present and some new initiatives. I'm very happy to announce that as of this Monday, Euroclear has added the Rwandan franc as a new currency to its eligible currency list. What this means is that clients of Euroclear, 2,000 financial institutions in more than 90 countries, can now issue and trade in Rwandan franc-denominated securities. I'm very pleased that we have with us a panelist, Bernard Ferrand of Euroclear. Given that this is now a currency in Euroclear, we, IFC, is working on our first offshore Rwandan franc bond, and hopefully in the near future, we will bring the offshore issuance to the market. Looking beyond at East Africa, just last week, we issued our first offshore Nigerian Naira bond. It was a small transaction, a one-year bond worth about Nigerian Naira 300 million. The interesting thing here is that given market volatility, there are investors, international investors, who can see through short-term volatility and still invest in the African growth story. That is very encouraging. I wanted to recognize this investor for this private placement transaction, LBB Invest, the asset management arm of German bank Landesbank Berlin. All this is to say that there is great interest among the international investor community who see the opportunity here in Africa. So now let's look ahead. In my mind, there is no reason why East Africa can't achieve what is already happening in places like India, China, or Singapore. Most of us are familiar with Singapore's success story, as Eusebius had alluded to earlier in the morning, thanks in large part to a focused effort to develop the financial market and become a regional center of financial excellency. To help build financial expertise here in the region, I'm pleased to let you know that IFC and the Milken Institute are exploring how we can partner with a top-tier US university to develop a first-rate academic degree program for capital market practitioners with a focus on sub-Saharan Africa. In this regard, we are working with Stacy Warden, who is here wearing two hats: Chair of the Board of Directors of the Capital Market Authority of Rwanda, and Milken Institute's Executive Director of the Center for Financial Market. And also consider India or China, where capital markets are linking international and domestic savings to the financing needs of the private sector. In both of these countries, IFC has recently issued offshore bonds to resounding international investor demand. And we are investing the proceeds onshore to support private sector development, directly linking capital market to private sector financing needs. We will talk more about some of these themes shortly. On the high-level panel, together with Chitra Ram Krishnan, the MD and CEO of India's National Stock Exchange, the Honorable Minister Gatete, Governor Bano Ndulu of the Bank of Tanzania, and Yung Wang, Deputy CEO and EVP of the China-Africa Development Fund. This region can achieve the same: deep, liquid, and efficient capital markets that finance priority sectors and facilitate economic development. Already, East Africa is building the foundation for capital market to flourish. Most of you are familiar with Rwanda's ambitious Vision 2020, which features capital market development as an essential ingredient for sustained inclusive economic growth. By the same token, Kenya's Vision 2030 recognizes capital markets as critical in mobilizing savings and investment. Regional integration will be an important element of this. Think of what capital market integration has done for the ASEAN economies. Countries that learned the harsh lessons from the Asian financial crisis of 1997-1998, the strong domestic and regional capital market are essential to withstand economic shocks and outflows of foreign investment. A much more current example comes from the Eurozone. In late January, Bank of England Governor Mark Carney made a notable speech where he said that the euro area is stagnating because of two key missing ingredients: capital market integration and fiscal union. The argument is that integration helps share risks through bank credit, equity financing, and fiscal flow. This is why the EAC, East Africa Community regional efforts are so important. And IFC and the World Bank are working with the East Africa Community Secretariat and governments and private sector partners in the different countries to support the development and integration of the region's capital market. This includes the EAC Financial Sector Development and Regionalization Project to build the foundation for a single market among the partner countries. Through ESMID, we are also supporting development of a regional capital market, focusing particularly on non-government bond market. Let me end here and just loop back to what we heard earlier today. My colleague Isiupis talked about the fundamental role the capital markets play in supporting long-term growth. Let me put it slightly differently. Unless local and regional capital market develop, nothing we do will move the needle towards achieving real and sustained economic and social progress. So I leave you with a final thought. I started my remark by commenting on the unique gathering of expertise in this room. I also talked about the vision and commitment and the tremendous progress already achieved by East Africa in developing the capital market. So over the next 2 days, let's think of what can each of us do to help accelerate the achievement of this goal. And let's make a joint commitment to turn these ideas into concrete solutions. By acting together, we can make a powerful impact in supporting East Africa's capital market and the region's broader development goals. Before I close, I have a little bit lighthearted request to all of you. IFC has the honor to give nickname to many bond markets when we become the first issuer. You are familiar with Kangaroo, with Maple, with Yankee, and IFC certainly can claim some credit in creating Panda, Dim Sum in China, Maharaja and Masala bonds in India, and we have Umuganda bond for the onshore, and we need a nickname for the offshore Rwanda franc bond. So please let us know, and we will gather. As a matter of fact, in the case of India, we had 2,000 Indian citizens signing a petition for a particular name. People can become very passionate about it. With that, Your Excellency, I thank you again for your strong support. Your presence sends the strongest signal possible about the importance of financial and capital market. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, for your remarks, recognizing the successful partnership between the government of Rwanda and IFC, the unique benefits of integrating our markets regionally, and also showcasing the exciting opportunities for growth in Rwanda, but also in the larger regional context of the African markets. Ladies and gentlemen, I did promise you earlier that we do have a very exciting event within today's opening ceremony, and we've come to that now. We shall be having an announcement and live demonstration of the cross-listing of a regional bank on our local stock exchange, Equity Bank Group. This is, in fact, the third regional cross-listing that we've had. And I think to complement what the Vice President of the IFC just said, this really bears testament to the growing integration of our regional markets. It also shows the growing investor confidence in our still young market. I believe, as the President said, we only bear to, as the Vice President, did mention, we only bear to benefit from connecting our regional markets. The wider access to markets, to capital, and to financial products can only strengthen our own individual domestic markets. With that, it is now my distinct pleasure to invite once again the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Honorable Claver Gatete, the CEO of Equity Bank Group, Mr. James Mwangi, and the CEO of the Rwanda Stock Exchange, Mr. Celestin Rwabukumba, for this announcement and live demonstration of the opening of this cross-listing.
You want to say something?
So, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, this is really going to be a live demonstration. On the screen to the left, you will be able to see that we already have live trading going on. The cross-listed shares are already on the exchange. But to demonstrate this, we will have the CEO of the Rwanda Stock Exchange hand over a bell to the CEO of Equity Bank Group, who will then give it to our Honorable Minister. This is all very important, and he will ring the bell to demonstrate the opening of this cross-listing.
This is a sign that the whole Equity Bank Group shares are going to be listed on this capital market in Rwanda, on the stock exchange. And this man, Celestin Rwabukumba, will be doing the trading shortly. So we thank the group, the Equity Bank Group, for this wonderful, I would say, initiative that is happening today here in Rwanda. We thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President.